Okay, so first of all, apologies in advance for just having you guys wait until Friday for me to hear about my thoughts on the Coca-Cola 600. It's not because I was busy or anything, but it's just because this race just left a sour taste in my mouth. But not for the reasons you think. I have some very interesting thoughts about it. But the main reason was because I just had to process my thoughts. It took me until this morning to process my thoughts over how I really felt. Because up until then, I've had some very contrarian thoughts, and I didn't feel like posting. Didn't feel like posting on or streaming a video if I didn't have my thoughts, my coherent thoughts. Um, did my phone just ring? Yeah, I thought I had put it on mute. Oh well. Okay. So, anyways, let's talk about this race. It's the Coca-Cola 600, part 3 of the greatest day in motorsports after the Monaco Grand Prix on Sunday morning and the Indy 500 earlier this afternoon. Or at least that was the plan, but because Mother Nature decided to make it rain during the Indy 500 for the first time in who knows how long. Like, seriously, I don't remember when was the last time the Indy 500 was impacted by weather. But yeah, the race was still underway when the Coca-Cola 600 started. This, of course, meant that Kyle Larson, the guy who was slated to attempt the Indy 500 Coca-Cola 600 double, he had a choice to make. Either stay at Indianapolis and run the 500, or leave and go to Charlotte. Because remember, Hendrick Motorsports, they had already announced that Justin Allgaier would sub in for Larson if anything happened that delayed his arrival to the track. But here's the thing. If Allgaier starts the race, Larson would not get any credit for the finish the 5 car got, even if he arrived halfway through to take over like he said he would. Because the rule book, the NASCAR rule book says the points and money go to whoever started the race. That has been one of the oldest rules in the book, and it's crystal clear. Like there is 100% consistency there. If you start the race, you get the points. It doesn't matter, no matter what happens to you afterwards. And that got me really upset because it didn't matter what choice Larson made. Mother Nature made sure the 1,100 miles would not happen, which made me really upset. Because this is what I was looking forward to the most out of this entire weekend. Because Larson, he was the guy that I felt had the best chance to not only complete all 1,100 miles, but win both races too. Because he's won the Coca-Cola 600 in the past. And he looked pretty fast in practice and qualifying too when McLaren actually put in the work on his Indy car. The only silver lining is that he has another chance next year because the deal that he signed with McLaren is a 2-year Indy 500 deal. So it's for this year and next year. So yeah, in the end, Larson decided to stay, which is a bit disappointing, but considering all the money and resources both Hendrick and NASCAR they had invested in promoting him, as well as a positive exposure that he gave the sport, it made sense for him to stay. Otherwise, it would have been a waste of money. I'm just, disappointed at the fact that this will put him behind the 8 ball when it comes to regular season title, and the Coca-Cola 600 is the highest points-paying race of the season with up to 70 points up for grabs if you sweep all 3 stages and go on to win. And I also know people are also worried about the whole playoff waiver situation if he doesn't get it. I know Hendrick, they submit already application for Larson to get the waiver. Obviously NASCAR doesn't have a timetable on the decision. But I'm honestly not worried about that. Like, bro, he's going to get a waiver. You think he and Hendrick would not have made the decision to stay if they knew he would lose playoff eligibility? Besides, NASCAR has no good reason to not give Larson a waiver, considering they have a history of giving waivers like candy. Like, for fuck's sakes, they gave Chase Elliott a waiver last year, despite him getting suspended for wrecking a driver on purpose. Coincidentally, this happened during last year's Coca-Cola 600 too, the incident in question. And not to mention, Larson practiced and qualified the car, and he had every intention to race if it wasn't for Mother Nature screwing him over. Not once, but twice. We'll get into Mother Nature screwing him over later on, but it's not like he was going to skip Charlotte and rest after the Indy 500. As a matter of fact, he even went as far as stating that it doesn't matter if he was late to the 600. He had every intention of ending the day at Charlotte driving his Cup car, even if whatever finish he got wouldn't have counted to the championship because he did not start the race. And the most important reason, look at all of the media exposure Larson got. He has become the closest thing we have to a superstar in modern NASCAR, somebody that transcends the sport itself. If NASCAR refuses to give Larson a waiver, not only will it be considered a gut punch, it would essentially eliminate all possibility of future drivers attempting the double, including Larson himself next year. So, in essence, NASCAR not giving Larson a waiver will hurt them as a sport. So this whole waiver talk is a non-conversation. They're going to give it to him. I don't know what's taking them that long, but they're going to give it to him. So, moving on into the race itself, just like the Indy 500, the Coca-Cola 600 was also under threat of rain. That same rain cell that caused the Indy 500 to be delayed was on its way to Charlotte, although the forecast had the rain coming around halfway rather than before the race began, so there were no issues there. The race started as scheduled. Ty Gibbs on the pole. He won his first career pole. He essentially swept the poles for both Xfinity and Cup, as he was if you remember, he was the pole sitter for the Xfinity race as well. William Byron, despite spinning out in practice, he managed to come back and qualify second. Christopher Bell third, Martin Truex fourth, Chase Elliott fifth, and Alex Bowman sixth. So up front, business as usual. Both Hendrick and Joe Gibbs swept the top 6 spots. Then Ross Chastain seventh, Tyler Reddick eighth, Michael McDowell ninth, and Justin Allgaier 10th. Because remember, Larson practiced and qualified the car in 10th, but since he is busy at Indy, Allgaier had to run in his place, had to start the race in his place until Larson came back. So he will obviously drop to the rear. Hamlin qualified 11th, Bubba Wallace 12th, then Josh Berry 13th, Daniel Suarez 14th, Kyle Busch 15th, Ryan Blaney 16th, moving down through the field, Carson Hocevar 20th, Justin Haley 22nd, Ricky Stenhouse 23rd, Zane Smith 25th, Joey Logano 28th, Jimmy Johnson 29th, Brad Keselowski 30th, Eric Jones 34th, Todd Gilliland 35th, Shane Van Gisbergen driving the 16 for Kaulig, he qualified 36th, BJ McLeod 37, he's now driving the 66 car for MBM Motorsports. An Xfinity team that, ironically, they did not run an Xfinity race this past weekend. Instead, they decided to run both the truck race with Jeffrey Earnhardt and the Cup race with BJ McLeod. Also, Ty Dillon, he's back running the 30. He qualified 38th. He's running the 50 car, not the 2311 50 car, but the Money Team 50 car. Except it's no longer called the Money Team because Floyd Mayweather is no longer involved with them. Now it's called Team Amerivet. But yeah, this is their first race after rebranding. Chris Buescher 39th and JJ Yeley 40th, driving the NY Racing 44 car to complete the full 40 car field. 40 cars showed up, 40 cars qualified, but we have a full field for this race. So I mentioned how Buescher qualified 39th. Well, that's because he crashed in practice and they had to go to a backup car. That's why they did not make a qualifying lap. The team was busy in the shop, not in the garage. They were in the shop. The 17 team actually loaded it up and went back to their race shop in Mooresville because it's pretty close to Charlotte. This is like a home game for most. This race is like a home game for most teams. But yeah, they were while everyone was qualifying, the RFK team, they were busy repairing that 17 car, or rather getting the backup ready. So yeah, he did not make a qualifying lap, and he will start from the rear. Justin Allgaier, like I said, driver change. Larson had qualified the car in 10th. Also, Joe Logano, unapproved adjustments. He qualified 28th. And Tyler Reddick, his team made an unapproved adjustment to the underwing after inspection. So he will have to not only start from the rear, but he will also have to serve a pass-through penalty on pit road on lap 1. He qualified 8th, so a bit of a rough start to his race. The green flag flies, and Ty Gibbs leads as Tyler Reddick, as expected. He makes his pass-through penalty and makes it back to the track just in front of the leader, which is important because it means that the leader won't have the clean air for the first couple of laps, as Reddick essentially takes the 54's clean air for himself, and he goes on to stay on the lead lap because of that. And from that point on, not much happens until green flag pit stops begin. We do see some big movers though, with Buescher making it to the top 20 and Logano cracking the top 25. The green flag pit cycle starts with Ryan Blaney, and then Logano, Briscoe, Burton, and Cindric also come in. Then Denny Hamlin follows suit, and this brings down Josh Berry, Ryan Preece, Eric Jones, and several others down pit road. Alex Bowman, Ross Chastain, Kyle Busch, Haley, Keselowski, Bubba Wallace, Chase Elliott. Kyle Busch got penalized for an uncontrolled tire because, of course. This eventually brought the leader Gibbs down pit road, as well as William Byron, Christopher Bell, Martin Truex, and everyone else aside from a select few, Michael McDowell, Chris Buescher, Van Gisbergen, Ty Dillon, Hocevar, JJ Yeley. By lap 50, however, all 6 of those guys came down pit road. Ty Dillon got penalized for man over the wall too soon, and this cycled the lead back to Ty Gibbs, with William Byron 2nd, Christopher Bell 3rd, Denny Hamlin 4th, and Martin Truex 5th. So you had all 4 Gibbs cars in the top 5, and then William Byron. And behind them, Bubba Wallace in 6th, who was driving for 2311. So the Toyotas were rolling pretty early on. You have 5 of them in the top 6. And yeah, Byron tried to make a pass for the lead, but with the lap traffic they were dealing with, the 54 was able to hold steady for quite a while, at least until he got challenged by the lap car of Justin Allgaier, who got fallen a lap down and was racing to stay on the lead lap. And the reason he was racing hard was pretty simple. His job was to get as many positions as possible and stay on the lead lap to make Larson's job that much easier when he comes back. And the moment Allgaier got back on the lead lap, Byron pounced on him as well to take the lead away. And not too long after, a caution came out for McLeod spinning in turn 4. And I just want to shout out Allgaier because he raced his way back into the lead lap on speed. If Allgaier is doing this, and I was thinking to myself as I was watching the first couple of laps, stage 1 of this race, if Allgaier was doing this, the rest of the field better watch out when Larson gets back on the car. Then we go to pit road. All of the leaders pit, and Ty Gibbs wins the race of pit road over William Byron. Number 1 pit stall effect. This is why you do well in qualifying. It's to get a shot at that coveted number 1 pit stall. Tyler Reddick, Todd Gilliland, Kyle Busch, Shane Van Gisbergen, Stenhouse, and Ryan Preece stayed out to take the waiver on and get back on the lead lap. And Denny Hamlin has a bad pit stop. He has to back up to exit his stall as Chris Buescher was pitting in front of him, and this dropped him down to 10th. And then he got hit with an equipment interference penalty, so he drops to the last car on the lead lap, tail end of the field. So it didn't really matter that he got held up by the 17. He got penalized anyways. So, anyways, the restart takes us to a 6-lap sprint to end the stage. Byron retakes the lead from the 54, and he proceeds to win stage 1. Ty Gibbs 2nd, Alex Bowman 3rd, Christopher Bell 4th, Martin Truex 5th, so again, Gibbs and Hendrick in the top 5. Bubba Wallace 6th, Ryan Blaney 7th, Brad Keselowski 8th, Josh Berry 9th, and Michael McDowell 10th. We go to pit road again, and it's a mixed bag this time around as strategy. You got Ty Gibbs, Ross Chastain, Noah Gragson, and Denny Hamlin staying out. Michael McDowell and Joe Logano take 2 tires, and everyone else takes 4. Kyle Busch had a slow stop on the right side of the car. An issue on the right with the right side of the car. Stenhouse also missed his pit stall. He had to come back down pit road. And Justin Haley also had to come back down pit road due to an issue with his helmet. And Corey LaJoie also got busted for speeding. So the stage is set for stage 2. It begins after a pretty lengthy stage break for no reason at all. But just like the last restart, Ty Gibbs loses the lead. This time to Ross Chastain on his outside, and this leaves him at the mercy of the guys on fresher tires like Christopher Bell, who soon enough passes him for 2nd, and then he does the same with Ross Chastain for the lead a couple of laps later. And again, just like stage 1, nothing pretty much happens of note. It's a pretty quiet stage 2 until green flag pit stops begin at around lap 145. Chris Buescher starts the cycle, bringing Austin Cindric, Allgaier, Tyler Reddick, Jimmy Johnson, Zane Smith, and Gragson with him. And soon enough, everyone follows suit. William Byron, McDowell, Bubba Wallace, Logano, Blaney, Hamlin, Chastain, Jones, Keselowski, Bowman. This eventually brings the leader Christopher Bell down pit road, and this gives the lead to Josh Berry. Him and Elliott stay out a little longer, but they eventually pit at around lap 153, which cycles the lead back to Bell with Keselowski second, Bubba Wallace third, and William Byron fourth. And the race stays like that until a caution comes out for Ryan Blaney, who, after getting penalized for an uncontrolled tire, he blew a right front tire. It could have been because the lock nut was not tightened properly too, but I believe this was on the lap where he was coming down pit road to serve his penalty too. But yeah, he hit the wall in turn 4 hard. He had to come back down pit road. The team is unable to beat the DVP, and he got to get pushed to the garage. The problem, though, is that his car was literally stuck on his pit stall, so the team could not push it to the garage. They had to call the tow truck, and that's what brought out the caution, because the race was green up until that point. They had to call the tow truck, and because of that, they had to close the pits and bring out the caution as well. So, we go to pit road after pits open, obviously, and it's another mixed bag of strategy. Martin Truex, Josh Berry, Chase Elliott, and Daniel Suarez stay out, and everyone else pits, with only Ty Gibbs taking 2 tires, which is why he won the race of pit road. But that was due to a miscommunication, because the plan was to pit for 4 tires like everyone else, but his crew chief, Chris Gale, he told Ty Gibbs to leave when the jack dropped, and that's what he did. So you obviously cannot blame him for following rules, for following actually the code. That was just a miscommunication on the crew chief's part. But yeah, Ross Chastain had a slow stop, and SVG got penalized for driving over too many boxes, and Kyle Busch also got penalized again for a safety violation. So we go to the restart, and Martin Truex and Chase Elliott battle for the lead. But it's William Byron on fresher tires who ends up getting the jump on both of them and retaking the lead when the next caution comes out for Gragson spinning on the backstretch and crashing hard after contact with Stenhouse. So we go to pit road. Again, half the field stays out and everyone else pits. Among those who stayed out, William Byron, Chase Elliott, Hamlin, Bubba Wallace, Bell, Ty Gibbs, Alex Bowman, McDowell, Chris Buescher, Allgaier, and SVG. And Harrison Burton also got penalized for a safety violation. So we go to the restart, and William Byron leads, while the Toyotas of Bell, Hamlin, and Bubba Wallace battle for a second behind him. Bell comes out on top, and he goes on to take the lead back from Byron, leaving the 24 at the mercy of his Toyota teammates. But Byron holds them off when another caution comes out for Harrison Burton spinning after blowing a right rear tire off of turn 2. I do believe some damage to the toe link was reported too, so he may have hit the wall fairly hard, and that's what caused the toe link to break and getting a flat tire as well. But this ends stage 2 under caution, so Christopher Bell wins stage 2. William Byron finishes second after holding off, doing a great job holding off the Toyotas behind him. Bubba Wallace third, Denny Hamlin fourth, Brad Keselowski fifth, Alex Bowman sixth, Chase Elliott seventh, Josh Berry 8th, Ross Chastain 9th, and Tyler Reddick 10th. So, we have reached the halfway point of the race. And just like I said earlier, there was a threat of rain looming all race long. And this is around the time the rain and thunderstorms start to become a real concern. Because I said that the rain cell that was at Indy will be approaching Charlotte around halfway. For now, though, the race is still on. And it's official anyways. So it doesn't really matter. Pit road. We go to pit road. Everyone pits. Bell wins the race of pit road over Byron and Bubba Wallace. Chase Elliott moves up to 4th. And Ty Gibbs picks up 7 spots, moving up from 13th to 6th. We go to stage 3, and Christopher Bell and William Byron battle side by side for 3 laps before the 20 clears him, and he leaves Byron at the mercy of Keselowski for 2nd. Brad eventually gets by the 24, and with great long run speed, he starts to close in on the leader and try and even take the lead away from him when another caution comes out for Corey LaJoie spinning in turn 4 after getting loose. So we go to pit road, the leaders pit, and Christopher Bell wins the race of pit road over Keselowski, Reddick, and Ty Gibbs. Daniel Suarez gets penalized for equipment interference, and also John Hunter Nemechek gets penalized too for an uncontrolled tire. And then we go to the restart. With potential weather on the horizon this time, the intensity picks up, some drivers knowing obviously and the spotters are telling their drivers that this could be the end of the race. Christopher Bell leads with Brad Keselowski second, but behind them, William Byron with the move of the race, passing both Ty Gibbs and Tyler Reddick for third on the bottom, 3 wide on the front stretch, right after the 54 and 45 tangle. I believe the 54 even hit the wall, but that 24 went way down the racetrack, a literal pass in the grass. I don't care that the grass was replaced with turf, but that was awesome. What was not awesome, though, was the caution for weather. Light rain plus a lightning strike, which is an automatic 30-minute delay. So the race is red flag on lap 250, and right on time, too, as Kyle Larson had just arrived on the track. The Indy 500 had just ended about lap 120 of the Coke 600. When the race started, they were, I believe they were in the second half of the Indy 500. So Larson, everyone knew that if Larson arrived on the track, he would be arriving at around for the second half of the race. He would be driving for the second half of the race. So he's right on time, if anything, just a little bit sooner, because some people had him arriving with 100 laps to go. But yeah, 150 laps is still enough for Larson to actually do something. So the team can just take their sweet time setting him up. They would not fall a lap down, but Larson will have to start as the last car on the lead lap, because if you make a drive, the NASCAR rules say that if you make a driver change during a red flag, that driver will have to start, the substitute driver will have to start at the back, the tail end of the field. However, as we saw with Allgaier, he was able to take the 5 car up to 13th, and that's where he was running before the red flag came out. So, first of all, shout out to Justin Allgaier. He did amazing work today. He did what he was asked to, and then some. No matter where Larson finishes, he already did his part. Larson can just take it from there. But most importantly, that 5 car will be flying with Larson behind the wheel. And that is a thought that crept into my mind, watching Allgaier work his way back into the lead lap in stage 1. Like I said, if Larson made it back with enough time left in the race, the rest of the field is in trouble. And 150 laps, unfortunately for the rest of the field, 150 laps is quite enough. Even if Larson starts at the tail end of the field, last car on the lead lap, that's still enough time for Larson to make something happen between all of the pit strategy shuffling and stuff. And this also set up for one of the potential funniest moments in NASCAR, where Larson comes back and ended up winning the whole race. But since Allgaier started the race, he will be officially credited with the win, which will make him a Cup winner in the official record books. The only problem was the lightning clock was constantly getting reset due to all of the thunderstorms, and then it started pouring. And due to said lightning clock, NASCAR could not send the jet dryers out on the track until the 30-minute hold had been lifted. And by then, the track was freaking drenched with water. But, and credit to NASCAR right there, instead of NASCAR calling the race right then and there, they sent the jet dryers out the moment the lightning hold was lifted. This is a crown jewel race, man. Of course they would try their hardest to get the entire race in, especially since Kyle Larson was on the track and ready to go, and race officials probably didn't want his trip back from Indy to be in vain. Okay, maybe I was just kidding on the last part. I really doubt Larson was on the minds of race officials when they made that decision to try and get the entire race in, but still, props to them for trying, even if it means this race will end past midnight. But come on, we had raced past midnight before. Remember the 2012 Daytona 500? So, we were all hyped that we will get a midnight NASCAR race, crown jewel race in, and that the race will end at around 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. The only problem was the track was too humid for NASCAR to even entertain racing past midnight, because NASCAR had initially estimated for the track to be ready at around 12 a.m., but when the storm left and the track drying began, the jet dryers, they have made little progress, and the race officials estimated that it would take until 1 a.m. at the very least to get the track ready. And with 150 laps left in the race, or basically 225 miles, you would have been looking at roughly 2.5 hours of action for the race to end at almost 4 a.m. For comparison, there were about 100 miles left in the 2012 Daytona 500 when that race was red flagged. Yes, I know the red flag was not for weather, but you still get the point. So, unfortunately, NASCAR made the controversial decision, or rather, they went back on their decision to actually get the entire race in, and they decided to call the race. So unfortunately, Mother Nature wins and locks herself into the playoffs for the... Nah, just kidding. But yeah, the race is called for rain, which makes Christopher Bell the winner of the Coca-Cola 600. All this talk about how we may race at midnight like we did at the 2012 Daytona 500, only to end up getting a repeat of how the 2009 Daytona 500 ended, where NASCAR decided to call the race just when they were starting to dry up the track because they determined the track drying would take longer than anticipated, and they just made Matt Kenseth the winner of that race. If you remember that Daytona 500, you know what I'm talking about. This is the exact same scenario that we saw right here happen at Charlotte. And this is going to be a very unpopular opinion. And I mean a very unpopular opinion. But I honestly understand to some extent why NASCAR made the call. Because you would have essentially forced the drivers to stay up until 4 a.m. otherwise. If you had the track ready at 12 a.m., you could entertain the idea of, racing until around 3 a.m., but racing until 4 a.m. is kind of pushing it. What I am going to blame NASCAR for is jumping the gun on this entire situation, not like assessing the track drying correctly. Instead, they just decided the moment the lightning hole was lifted, they sent the jet dryer and they said, yeah, we can get this track ready at around 12 a.m., by 12 a.m. and we can have midnight racing. But then when NASCAR decides, they realize that they make little progress, it's like, you know what, let's not get the race in, honestly. It could take until like past midnight to get that race ready, and they will have to restart at 1 a.m. So yeah, race is already official anyway, so we can just call it right then and there. So I don't have an issue with NASCAR, calling the race, because, NASCAR, they have made like decisions to call the race previously. They have already made those decisions in the past. What I am going to blame NASCAR for is for jumping the gun and promising these race fans some race at midnight. Like, everyone got hyped up, only for them to get their hopes crushed to the ground when NASCAR announced that, you know what, screw it, we're just gonna call the race right then and there. It's just, after making those fans that were in attendance especially stay through the heavy rain only to watch as NASCAR decides to call the race after it has stopped raining, that's in really bad taste. If you're going to call the race, call it when the track is wet, not when you're midway through drying the track, because then it's a bad look to you as a sport. Again, I do not blame NASCAR for making the call, because the race was official. They were 100% in the right to make that call. But if you're going to make the call, it's all about the timing. And, after NASCAR had promised the fans that they will be racing at midnight, only for those fans to watch as NASCAR calls the race right after they start drying the track, simply because, they feel that the track drying is taking longer than anticipated. And I feel, and again, it wouldn't surprise me if this was true, but I heard that Fox also played a part in that because they wanted to air some midnight news and stuff like that. If that's the case, then fuck Fox. I cannot wait until they get out of the sport. At least that's what I would love to say, but we are stuck with them until 2031 because of that big network deal NASCAR signed. So unfortunately, we're gonna be stuck with Fox for quite a while. But if that's the case, and if that's what actually happened, that NASCAR, they actually wanted to go back racing, and Fox said nah, because if you look at Mike Joy's body language and how he was trying to slowly speaking, like trying to articulate his words and getting the right choice of words out, it's pretty clear that this was a network decision and not as much as it was a NASCAR decision. But still, NASCAR's gonna take some heat because they're the sanctioning body, but Fox should also take some heat because this is some rumors, that it was a network decision, but considering the track record and the recency that Fox has given us in regards to poor coverage, it wouldn't surprise me if that was the case. Not to mention, the biggest loser in all of this situation is Kyle Larson. This guy went through the trouble of coming past halfway just to run the final third of the race, And when he gets there, all set up to take over for Allgaier, the race gets red flagged and eventually called. So he didn't even get to race a single lap, and it's going to show in the official record books that he missed the race because he was running at Indy. If you look at stuff in a vacuum, of course, where he got a chance to finish in the top 10, by the way, until he got hit with a speeding penalty and he finished 18th. I'm talking about the Indy 500, of course. Not to mention, this is also a huge blow to his regular season title aspirations, as he would no doubt lose the points lead. As a matter of fact, he did lose the points lead. Hamlin is now the new points leader, Truex is second, Larson is third now. So we all knew that hours before the race began, but still, it's still disappointing just to actually see that happen. So all Larson got out of today was an 18th place finish at Indy that could have been a top 10, and not even getting to turn a single lap at the Coca-Cola 600, because that same rain cell that delayed that Indy 500 was the same rain cell that caused the Coca-Cola 600 to end early. That potential storyline of him coming back to win it all and giving Allgaier his first career cup win because, he started the race, that storyline goes down the drain. Oh well, at least there's next year. But what really pisses me off, more than, the decision of NASCAR calling the race, and this is where I'm going into rant territory here, is the fan base's reaction to this whole thing, though. Like, seriously, I understand yo people are mad, but damn, saying that NASCAR should bend the rules just this one time and run the remainder of the race on Monday afternoon, saying that 250 of 400 laps is too little racing to be called official, like, this is literally the first time I have seen this stuff brought up by NASCAR fans themselves, arguing that 50% of the race distance should not be enough to consider a race official. Like, dude, it is as crystal clear as crystal water in the rule book. If a race is red flagged halfway through, that is 50% of its total distance, and cannot be resumed in a, quote, reasonable amount of time, the race is called official, and the running order at the time of the red flag becomes the finishing order. Like, I understand why you're upset, and even more so if you were at the track waiting for the race to resume, only for NASCAR to call it after they promised you racing at midnight. You wanted to see Larson slice and dice his way through the field. I get it. I am upset too. But are you really that mad that you want NASCAR to break a rule that they have been pretty consistent on since forever? Mind you, these are the same fans that joke about NASCAR for being consistently inconsistent. But the moment they enforce X or Y rule correctly, with 100% consistency, you got a problem with it? Y'all need to chill. Like, we can debate all we want on what a reasonable amount of time even means. Like, I get it. That's debatable. Because a reasonable amount of time, that definition is very vague. But other than that, NASCAR has enforced that rule of, races considered official past halfway or after Stage 2 ends since 2017, stage era began. NASCAR has enforced that rule pretty consistently. So yes, I'm disappointed, but by the rule book, this was the right call. Again, if NASCAR followed through, this race would have ended at fucking 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. And these drivers, they are not endurance drivers. They are stock car racing drivers. Even they have limits. I mean, Christopher Bell said it himself in his Victory Lane interview that he was almost falling asleep when he got news that he had won the race. So I cannot even imagine how that sleep factor would have played into the remainder of the race if it was ran. But enough talking about the the race. My rant is over. Let's talk about Christopher Bell, because I went into quite a little bit of a rant there. This is his second win of the year after hitting a rough patch in these last 2 months. Hopefully this win is what the 20 team needs to get back on track and potentially make another Championship 4 run. Christopher Bell is my championship pick, so I know I want him to run well. But yeah, let's go over the finishing results here. Brad Keselowski finished second, another top 2 finish for him. I believe it is his 4th in the last 6 races, and also RFK Racing's 5th in the last 6, if you count Chris Buescher's 2nd place finish at Kansas. Keselowski has quickly become Ford's best driver as of late, with Blaney and Penske starting to falter. I actually did not expect that, honestly. And, I don't hate it, obviously. We love Keselowski here. But yeah, I did not expect Keselowski quickly becoming Ford's best driver in the months of April and May. Um, William Byron finishes third after that amazing pass in the grass. Tyler Reddick fourth, coming back from his pass-through penalty on lap 1, finishing the top 5. Denny Hamlin fifth. Ty Gibbs in sixth. Also, speaking of Denny Hamlin, I believe this is where the streak of him leading at least one lap. Yeah, that streak just snapped because he did not lead a lap in this race. So this is the first time this season he finishes a race without leading any laps. Which is still impressive, though. You started the first 13 races of the season leading a lap. That's still impressive. Still a bit disappointing because that's another thing. If the race went on, you bet Hamlin would have at the very least led a lap, even if it was during green flag pit stops like he did at Darlington. But still a bit disappointing. Ty Gibbs 6th. Great top 10 finish for him after starting from the pole. Chase Elliott 7th. Ross Chastain 8th. Alex Bowman 9th. And Josh Berry 10th. Back-to-back top 10 finishes for him, as he finished 3rd at Darlington 2 weeks ago as well. Or 3 weeks ago, because Coke 600 was almost... it's almost been a week since this race happened. But yeah. Bubba Wallace 11th. Martin Truex 12th. Justin Allgaier 13th. Again, considering he had zero experience with the Gen 7 car on intermediates and he fell a lap down early on, the fact that he finished 13th is outstanding. Great work for Justin Allgaier. I tip the cap off to him. Joey Logano 14th. Kyle Busch 15th. His streak of 7 consecutive top 10 finishes in the Coke 600. Yeah, that streak has been snapped. Then Daniel Hemrick in 18th. Justin Haley 22nd. Chris Buescher 23rd. Daniel Suarez 24th. Shane Van Gisbergen 28th. Jimmy Johnson 29th. Ty Dillon 36th. BJ McLeod 37th. Noah Gragson 38th. Ryan Blaney 39th. And JJ Yeley in last place in 40th. So, overall, how should I grade this race? I mean, for what it's worth, the racing was shaping up to be pretty good until the rain washed away all that and NASCAR made the controversial decision to call the race when they determined that track drying would take, quote, longer than expected. I saw some pictures and I thought the track was pretty dry and they were making good progress. So, yeah, I have no doubt in my mind that Fox, they definitely played a part on the decision making. But what we saw on this race, when it was under green, it was pretty decent. But this race felt incomplete without a proper conclusion. Like, just when we were bracing ourselves for the big moment, only for NASCAR to abruptly just end the race right then and there, it just felt so underwhelming. And that is what leaves this race and that is what has this race leaving me with a sour taste in my mouth, and many NASCAR fans, is that this race didn't end with a very satisfying conclusion. Yeah, I understand that they booed Bell in victory lane, and I don't know, he felt like a little bit weird about that, but trust me, they were not booing Christopher Bell. They were booing the fact that the race was called. So yeah, the race was decent while it was under green, but you know, the way it ended, it really takes the grading down quite a bit. I'm gonna give this race a C. C for Coke. But no, just kidding. Yeah, I'm gonna give this race a C. If this race ended, if this race went all the way, it could have been in contention for like a B- at the very least. But yeah, that controversial call, it really takes the grading down quite a bit. Just a C. Driver of the day, I mean, it's pretty clear it's Justin Allgaier. One of the very few positives that came out of this race was Justin Allgaier, because with the race being called, he will be officially credited with running all laps that were contested, because he finished on the lead lap too, despite having left the track hours before NASCAR announced the race was called. And I know Larson was going to take over from there, but since the race never resumed, Allgaier technically started and finished the race. And he did a damn good job, despite having minimal experience with this Gen 7 car on intermediates, slowly figuring the car out, gaining confidence as the race went on, even making gutsy moves to stay on the lead lap and coming out of it with the top 15. Again, he checked all of the boxes and then some. I know he already said he doesn't want to be back full-time in Cup, but man, if he ever gets the itch to go full-time Cup racing again, some competitive team needs to consider him because he still got it. Honorable mentions. I also want to give honorable mentions to Tyler Reddick, who started the race with a pass-through penalty and almost falling a lap down. He went from that to almost finishing in the top 5 to finishing in the top 5. And also Josh Berry, back-to-back top 10s in what has been a very, very difficult week for Stewart-Haas Racing leading into this weekend at Gateway. Obviously, I'm going to be making a video on that because I also have some thoughts about that situation and speculation of what's going to happen. But yeah, you can expect that video tomorrow. I'll try to get it tomorrow morning, if not sooner than that. Because this one, I've had it in the drafts all week long, but I just wanted to get this Charlotte video out of the way. So, yeah, I'm just going to leave this here, and let's see what happens next.